a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is a post-apocalyptic action role-playing video game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It is the fifth major installment in the Fallout series and was released worldwide on November 10, 2015, for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. The game is set within an open-world post-apocalyptic environment that encompasses the city of Boston and the surrounding Massachusetts region known as the Commonwealth. The main story takes place in the year 2287, 10 years after the events of Fallout 3 and 210 years after the Great War, which caused catastrophic nuclear devastation across the United States. The player assumes control of a character referred to as the sole survivor, who emerges from a long-term cryogenic stasis in Vault 111, an underground nuclear fallout shelter. After witnessing the murder of their spouse and kidnapping of their son, the sole survivor ventures out into the Commonwealth to search for their missing child. The player explores the game's dilapidated world, complete various quests, help out factions, and acquire experience points to level up and increase the abilities of their character. New features to the series include the ability to develop and manage settlements, and an extensive crafting system where materials scavenged from the environment can be used to craft drugs and explosives, upgrade weapons and armor, and construct, furnish and improve settlements. Fallout 4 also marks the first game in the series to feature full voice acting for the protagonist. Fallout 4 received positive reviews from critics, with many praising the world depth, player freedom, overall amount of content, crafting, and soundtrack, while criticism was mainly directed at the game's visuals and technical issues. The game was a commercial and critical success, generating $750 million within the first 24 hours of its launch, and received numerous accolades from various gaming publications and award events, including the respective awards for Game of the Year and Best Game at the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences and British Academy Games Awards. Bethesda has released 6 downloadable content add-ons, including the expansions Far Harbor and Nuka World. Gameplay. Fallout 4 is an action role-playing game set in an open-world environment. Gameplay is similar to that of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the two previous primary iterations in the series. Returning features include a camera that can switch between a first-person and third-person perspective. Fallout 4 introduces features including a layered armor system, base building, a dialogue system featuring 111,000 lines of dialogue, a crafting system which implements every lootable object in the game. Enemies such as mole rats, raiders, super mutants, death claws, and feral ghouls return in Fallout 4, along with the companion dogmeat. The player has the ability to freely roam in the game's world and leave a conversation at any time. If the player has discovered a certain location, they may fast travel to it. They have the ability to customize weapons. The game includes over 50 base guns, which can be crafted with a variety of modifications, such as barrel types and laser focus, with over 700 modifications available. Power armor has been redesigned to be more like a vehicle than an equipable suit of armor, requiring fuel and being essentially dead weight without it, and can be modified, allowing the player to add items such as a jetpack, or selecting separate types of armor for each part of the suit. A new feature to the series is the ability to craft and deconstruct settlements and buildings. The player can select some in-game objects and structures, and use them to freely build their own structures. In addition, the towns can be powered with working electricity, using a power line system. Merchants and non-player characters can inhabit the player's settlements, for which the player must provide sustenance by growing food in makeshift patches and building waterspouts. The player can build various defenses around their settlements, such as turrets and traps, to defend against random attacks. The Pip-Boy, a personal computing device strapped to the player character's wrist, allows the player to access a menu with statistics, maps, data, and items the player has acquired. The player can find game cartridges, which can be played on the Pip-Boy or a terminal. A new feature for the Pip-Boy interface is a downloadable application for iOS, Android, and Windows smartphones and tablets. This optional app allows players to access the Pip-Boy interface on a separate screen. and play the collected game cartridges when not playing the main game. Another returning gameplay feature is the Vault-Tec assisted targeting system. While using VATS, real-time combat is slowed down, and action is played out from varying camera angles in a computer graphics version of bullet time. Various actions cost points, limiting the actions of each combatant during a period of time, and the player can target specific body parts for attacks to inflict specific injuries. Headshots can be used for quick kills or to blind, legs can be targeted to slow enemy movement, and opponents can be disarmed by shooting at their weapons. Unlike previous games, in which the player had a random chance to inflict a critical hit, they are now performed manually through VATS at the beginning of the game. Players are given points to spend on a character progression system called SPECIAL. The system represents 7 statistics, namely strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. When the player earns enough experience points to gain a new level, they unlock an ability. When the player allocates more points to a statistic, more abilities can be unlocked. These perks can also be upgraded to improve the protagonist's efficiency and to further unlock abilities. There are about 275 perks available for the player to unlock. There is no level cap and the game does not end once the main story is complete. The player may only travel with one companion at a time, although the player is accompanied by other characters in certain quests. For the first time in the series, these companions can interact with the environment on the player character's behalf. For example, if the player character does not have required skills to hack a terminal or pick a lock, they can order the companion to do it for them. The companion present will react to some of the player's actions in 4 ways. Raising a companion's approval to 1000 points will result in them idolizing the player and granting a specific perk. However, if their approval drops low enough, they will turn hostile or leave. Some recruitable companions also provide additional perks for the player, such as Codsworth, who provides bonus energy resistance. Setting: Fallout 4 takes place in the year 2287, 10 years after the events of Fallout 3 and 210 years after the Great War, a war between the United States and China over natural resources that ended in a nuclear holocaust in 2077. The setting is a post-apocalyptic retro future, covering a region that includes Boston, Massachusetts and other parts of New England known as the Commonwealth. Unlike the previous titles, Fallout 4's story begins on the day the bombs dropped, October 23, 2077. The game takes place in an alternate version of history that sees the 1940s and 1950s aesthetics such as diners and a drive-in theater. The design and technology advance in the directions imagined at the time. The resulting universe is thus a retro-futuristic one, where the technology has evolved enough to produce laser weapons, manipulate genes, and create nearly autonomous artificial intelligence, but all within the confines of 1950s solutions like the widespread use of atomic power and vacuum tubes, as well as having the integrated circuitry of the digital age. The architecture, advertisements, and general living styles are also depicted to be largely unchanged since the 1950s, while including contemporary products, such as a robotic rocking horse for children in one advertisement, or posters for the underground vaults that play a central role in the storyline of the game. There are 4 main factions that the player can choose to support throughout the story. The Brotherhood of Steel, an anti-synth faction hoping to preserve technology in the Commonwealth. The Institute, a secretive organization that creates synths. The Minutemen, a faction that aims to drive out raiders and other threats to the Commonwealth. And the Railroad, a secretive organization dedicated to rescuing synths. Characters: the player's character takes shelter in Vault 111, emerging exactly 210 years later on October 23, 2287 and assuming the name of the sole survivor. There are 13 possible companions in the story. Companions who must be encountered include Codsworth, the sole survivor's robot butler; Deacon, a railroad agent; Dogmeat, a loyal German shepherd; John Hancock, the mayor of Goodneighbor; Nick Valentine, a synth detective; Piper Wright, an intrepid reporter; and Preston Garvey, the leader of the Minutemen. Of these companions, however, only Dogmeat is required to join. Optional companions include Kate, an Irish accented cage fighter. Curie, a robot scientist turned synth. Dons, a Brotherhood of Steel paladin. Macready, a mercenary. Strong, a human sympathetic super mutant. And X688, an Institute courser. Kate, Curie, Dons, Hannock, Macready, Piper, and Preston are romance options for a sole survivor of either gender provided they idolize them. Story. The story begins in 2077 in Sanctuary Hills, located near Concord, Massachusetts. The player character is at home with their spouse, their son Sean, and Codsworth. A representative from Vault-Tec admits the family into Vault 111, the local fallout shelter. Moments later, a news bulletin warns of an incoming nuclear attack. As the detonation occurs, the family evacuates to the vault, where they are tricked into entering cryogenic tubes and frozen alive. After an unknown period of time, they are awakened by two strangers. The player's spouse is murdered and Sean is kidnapped. The player is put back into cryogenic sleep, but awakens again when the life support system malfunctions. The player discovers that they are the sole survivor of Vault 111, and vows to avenge their spouse's death and find Sean. The player character, known as the sole survivor, heads home to find Sanctuary Hills in ruins. They reunite with Codsworth, revealing that 210 years have passed since the war. Codsworth suggests that the survivor goes to Concord for help. The survivor finds and befriends Dogmeat, and rescues Preston Garvey, one of the last members of the Minutemen. The sole survivor then travels to Diamond City, a fortified settlement based in the ruins of Fenway Park, where they meet Piper. There, they learn about a secretive organization called the Institute that has been terrifying the Commonwealth by kidnapping people and replacing them with synths, synthetic humans indistinguishable from real humans. The sole survivor seeks out Nick Valentine, a detective based in Diamond City, to locate their son. With his help, they uncover the identity of their spouse's killer, Conrad Kellogg. After learning from Kellogg that Sean is being held in the Institute, the sole survivor kills him and retrieves a cybernetic implant from his brain for further access into his memories. During this time, the Brotherhood of Steel arrives in the Commonwealth on the Pridewin, an airship. The sole survivor learns from Brian Virgil, an ex-Institute scientist, that the only way into the Institute is by using a teleportation chip. After retrieving the chip, the survivor decodes it with the help of the Railroad. Virgil provides the blueprints for the teleportation device, which the sole survivor constructs by allying with the Brotherhood, Minutemen, or Railroad. The sole survivor successfully enters the Institute, and discovers that Sean is the Institute's director. Sean, now an old man calling himself father, reveals that he was kidnapped by Kellogg to become a specimen for synth experiments due to his pure pre-war DNA, and that the sole survivor remained in stasis for a further 60 years before being awoken again. Sean later reveals that he is dying of cancer and wishes for the survivor to become his successor. The sole survivor can side with the Institute. If they do so, they initiate a purge in the Commonwealth, wiping out the Brotherhood and Railroad, and assume control of the Institute after Sean's death. Otherwise, the sole survivor devises a plan with their faction to fight the Institute. Siding with the Brotherhood or Railroad will force the sole survivor to destroy the other faction. The sole survivor detonates a nuclear reactor, destroying the Institute. After this feat, the survivor must lastly wipe out any remaining hostile faction. Otherwise, they will remain neutral. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?